Okay, welcome back everybody on Zoom and in person, Baruch Hashem. And we're continuing here in Tehillim Mem, which is 40. And we're holding approximately in the 7th verse over here. We mentioned last week that Dovid HaMelech is exclaiming his tremendous amount of amunah and bitachon in the Rabbi Shalem, how he sees with all of the difficulties that he goes through in his life and the challenges that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has put him through, the only reason that he put him through those challenges is to make him a greater person. And therefore, instead of sinking into, I don't know if the word is empathetic feelings that he has or hurt feelings that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does, everything that he does to him, rather, Dovid HaMelech sings the Shir Chadash. He sings a new song. It's a song where he's mechadish. He sees within everything that transpires in his life, instead of seeing negativity, he sees positivity. Instead of seeing destruction, he sees building. Instead of seeing hardships, he sees an opportunity for him to grow and to cleave to the Rabbi Shalem. And we're going to continue along this vein today as we pick up in TEHILLIM Mem, number 40. And we're on verse Zayin over here. And the pasuk says, Zevach umincha lo chafatzta. HaKadosh Baruch Hu you do not desire these offerings, a meal offering and a sacrifice. Oznayim karisali. Rather you pierced my ears, or your ears, you're allowing me to hear things in my ears. Oila v'chata lo sha'alta. But you did not ask, or you did not acquire for yourself my korbanos, my sacrifices. What is Dovid HaMelech saying over here? Says Rav Hirsch the following idea. And this is all based on things that we have learned previously, and a whole mahalich, the whole way that we understand the way that Hashem runs the world. And that is the following, that every single time that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings things to a person's life, so a person should not think that all that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants in response is the sacrifice itself. A person gets woken up to the realities of life. They see the difficulties that are going on that we've been speaking about with everything that took place in Meron. What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want from us? Who knows what Hashem wants from us? But we know one thing, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu always wants a response from the Jewish people, and He wants us to dig inside of ourselves and to see what we could do to become better, what we can do to fill the void and the gaping holes of ruchnius that are no longer in this world because of the 45 kedoshim that have left the world. But that itself is not enough, says Dovid HaMelech, meaning it's not enough just that you will sacrifice yourself. It's not enough that you'll just do a little extra. So I'll make sure that I light the Shabbos candles 5 minutes earlier every week. I'll be more careful in the laws of Lashon Hara. I'll learn a little bit extra. Whatever it is that a person thinks they're going to take upon themselves, Hashem does not want the actions alone. The actions are important, but He doesn't want the actions alone. Rather, writes Rav Hirsch, and that is that without moral self-improvement of one's personality, of their essence of who they are, so then the offering itself that you are bringing to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's not sufficient and pleasing in the eyes of Hashem. Just to respond and to react to a situation in one's life by doing the perfunctory action that you think is going to make things better, that's not really what Hashem is asking for, looking for. What HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to know is that there are changes that are going on inside of the person. Are they making amends with inside themselves? Are they taking it to heart? And when they're going to do this extra mitzvah, or this extra 5 minutes, or this extra deed that they feel is so important to make themselves into a better person, is it coming not only with the physical action that the person is doing, but is it coming together with a mindset of self-improvement? Is it coming together with a thinking and a probing individual who recognizes that the action alone is not what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants? Hashem wants me to actually elevate my neshama, elevate my maturity and Yiddishkeit. He wants me to become somebody that is much more aware of the intentions, of the actions, of the deeds that I am doing. So when we react to a tzara, when we react to a troubling time, whether it's personal or it's communal, so it's not enough just to say the Tehillim. It's not enough just to do the mitzvah. It's not enough. That's good. A person should obviously pick something upon themselves that they want to do, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu says sacrifices on their own. And he's talking over here, sacrifices, for example, when they had a Beis HaMikdash and they could bring a korban, a sacrifice, the sacrifice without the proper kavanah behind it, without the proper intent, the sacrifice without a person saying that I'm going to transform myself to the bringing. When a person would bring a korban chatas, they would bring a sin offering. The person themselves had to put their hands on the head of the animal, and they would put weight onto their head. They would put some weight on there, and they would feel the animal under their hands, and they would say the following declaration: really, it should be me. Really, I'm the one that should be going through this. Really, I'm the one that should be shechted, and I should have my blood sprinkled on the mizbech, and my limbs should be cut into pieces and offered there and be burned up on the altar. It's really me. I'm the one who made a mistake. The animal didn't do anything wrong. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu, He wants me to live. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to have more opportunities for mitzvahs. He wants me to be able to serve Him in the proper way. So therefore, says the person, it should be me, but it's not me, because Hashem made a chesed. He made it that if I bring a sheep, the sheep will be in place of me, and in that way, the sheep will take my sins, and I'll be able to now to rectify my mistakes and serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu better. So what do you see in a korban? In the way that a korban is brought, is that it has to come with the mental understanding and the awareness that through the korban, through the sacrifice, I am changing myself as well. Korban is a language of karev, to come close. The only way that a person can truly bring themselves close to Hashem is when your mind and your heart and your soul are in the actions that you are doing. If a person, children in general, are not so close to Hashem, even though they say Hashem's name, but they're just doing actions, they're doing deeds. The heart, the soul, the brains of the understanding of what they're doing is not fully there. It's only when we mature, it's only when we expand, when we become older and wiser in our tefillahs, in our mitzvahs, and our adherence to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's will, so then we create deeper connections to the Rebbeinu Shalom. How do we do that? Your mind has to be there. Says Dovid HaMelech, I understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's not enough just to do the act. It's not enough to be involved in the mitzvah. If I'm not thinking about it, I'm not aware of it, I'm not trying to improve myself and elevate myself, so then the korban, it's nice, don't not do the korban. Don't not do the mitzvah. Don't not take an extra 5 minutes upon yourself when you're going to light your candles every week. It'll be a schus for the victims of Meron. Fine, so do it. But know why you're doing what you're doing. And have intention when you're doing it. And think to yourself about the mitzvah that you're involved with. That's why a person shouldn't jump into mitzvahs happenstance. They have to go, like we said in the parsha last week, the klalos, all the curses come when Klal Yisroel goes bekeri, when they go in a coincidental happenstance type of way in the mitzvahs. And one of the pshatim over there is not just that you think that everything in life is coincidental and you don't recognize HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but one of the pshatim is also that when you go through mitzvahs in such an uncalculated way, when you just jump in and you don't think about what you're doing and you're not aware of what you're doing and you're not holding in the essence or the meaning or the intention of the mitzvah itself, that's not the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to do mitzvahs. He wants us to be connected. He wants us to have an inner connection to the mitzvah. The only way that you can do that, you have to learn, you have to understand, you have to think about it, you have to be aware of it, and you have to connect in a deeper way so that the mitzvah has much more meaning to you. Says the pasuk further, and he writes, "Az amarti hine basi b'megillah sefer." Then Dovid says, I have arrived there, meaning I got to that point where I'm not just bringing the korban, but rather I got to the point where I have an awareness and a connection to the deeper meanings of that mitzvah. And he said, "Hine basi b'Megillah Sefer." I've come with a Megillah Sefer, with a book, with a scroll of a book, Kasuv alai, and that is what is incumbent upon me. Says Rav Hirsch over here. We'll see some of the other Meforshim also, I think. But Rav Hirsch writes the following. He said, "There's no doubt for me or for anyone else amongst us as to what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants of us in return for all that He has done for us." Remember, Dovid HaMelech did not see the misery in his plight and his situation in life. Dovid HaMelech was always seeing the good. Dovid was always looking past what everybody else would think was tragedy, and Dovid HaMelech was always trying to see what he's going to benefit and the goodness that is there. And therefore he understands that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to take care of me in this way, there must be something that He wants from me in return. What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want from me in return? Says Dovid, it's clearly and explicitly set down in the Megillah Sefer, which he says is not a Megillah, it's not just a scroll, not any scroll. It is the Torah itself. The Torah teaches me what my duties are to Hashem. The Torah shows me what it means to be a Jew. The Torah informs me of in the world of Amunah, in the world of Bitachon, in the world in Asiyas HaMitzvahs, performing mitzvahs. HaKadosh Baruch Hu shows me what all of that is about. And therefore, since that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us the Torah, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu has imparted that wisdom to us, so he says that when I come and I bring my korban right now, Hashem, which is my korban of gratitude to you for all that you have done, it's not coming empty-handed. It's coming with all of my heart and all of my soul behind it, because I understand just how much you expect of me and how much you want of me. And I will do my best, says Dovid HaMelech, to perform the mitzvahs, to perform all of the deeds and the work that you want me to do. I will do it again with that simas halev, with putting my heart to it, with understanding. I'm not just going to jump in happenstance to a world of mitzvahs. I'll be thought out. I'll be calculated. Now again, like the Nefesh HaChaim writes, the Nefesh HaChaim says, don't get so caught up in the machshavas and the thoughts that you just can't do mitzvahs at all. I'll only do the mitzvah when I get to the point where I understand exactly what I'm doing. You'll never do a mitzvah, because you'll never really understand exactly why you're doing what you're doing, or to be able to get to that point. He says, I'm not going to daven until my mind is completely focused and I push all other extraneous thoughts out of my mind, and I'll have complete kavanah in every single word that I say. Says Nefesh HaChaim, then don't even bother davening, because you'll never get to that point. So we try, we make effort, we realize we're not going to reach that level every single time, probably never going to reach that level, but little by little by little by little we improve. Says Rav Hirsch, based on the words of Dovid HaMelech over here, I've got the scroll in my hand, I have Torah, and Torah tells me all these amazing world of mitzvahs that you want from me. I know what you want, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I'm going to try my best, I'm going to try my hardest over here to express myself in that way, and I am going to, as he writes over here, I'm going to utilize the Torah and the mitzvahs that you have given me, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to be able to bring myself korev, to bring myself closer to you in all that I do. La'asais, the next verse, La'asais ritzayncha Elokai. I'm here to do your will, Hashem, my God. Chafatzti, that's my desire. My desire is to do your will. V'sayrascha b'seichmei, you should know, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, your Torah is inside my mei, it's in my kishkas. The Torah is not something that is external. The Torah is not something that is superficial to me. The Torah is not something that is intellectually intriguing. Rather, the Torah is so deep inside of me, it's in mei, it's in the deepest places inside. Says Rav Hirsch over here, he says that in order for me to do your will in the right way, to do Ritzayncha, to do your Ratzon HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he says, I must abandon my personal desires. Now Dovid is saying over here, I'm going to abandon all of my personal desires. Dovid was on the level to do such a thing. And that's the way that I was able to accept the Torah into my deepest parts of who I am. Chazal tell us that before a person davens, that the Torah should go into their mind, that they should be able to learn Torah and be able to retain it and to learn it and to accept it, they should daven that the taivas for food, the desires for food and all these things, that should not go into their mouth. Because once that a person gets immersed in this world and they get immersed in the desires of this world, so then it's a constant battle. Torah and Ruchnius is very fine, it's very delicate. And to be able to be misyaches, to connect to it in the right way, if there's too much of the body, too much of the physicality, too much of the desires that are in one's life, it's very hard to fully embrace the Torah. So Dovid HaMelech is saying over here, since that my goal in life is to fulfill Ritzaincha, to fulfill your will, Hashem, and that's the way that I'm going to get the Torah deepest inside of me, so therefore the study of Torah becomes my sacred duty. I studied in such a manner, so deep, that all of the laws of the Torah penetrated my flesh and my blood, and has controlled and shaped all of my life, my thoughts, and my aspirations. That's the way that Torah is supposed to be in the life of a Jew. Not that there is my life and there's also Torah, not that there is all the other trappings of this world, and there's also this time that I come to shul and I learn and I study and it's a nice thing, but rather what shapes and what forms and what creates us to be the people that we are is the deeper that I allow the Torah to be nivla, to be absorbed inside of my constitution. The more penetrating the words of Torah are into my heart and into my mind, the more that I'm able to use the powers of my neshama, which is infused with the holiness of the Torah, to control my desires and to push away the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination that is there. So then the more I'm going to be able to live my life as a Torah Jew. And that's the goal. The goal is not, are you Hasidish? Are you Chabad? Are you Breslov? Are you Litvak? Are you Sephardi? That's not the goal. HaKadosh Baruch has a smattering of all different types of soldiers in his army, so it doesn't matter where your allegiance is in that practice. But what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from every single one of us is, are you a Torah Jew? It doesn't matter, you have long payas or you have no payas. Doesn't matter if you wear a tichel on your head or you're wearing a sheitel on your head. It doesn't matter if you keep 42 minutes after Shabbos, you keep 72 minutes after Shabbos. That's not the main thing. The main thing is, are you a person who has absorbed Torah in their life? Because when you absorb it, so then you act in a different way, you talk in a different way, you think in a different way, you progress through life in a different way, because Torah becomes the Torah becomes the guiding force in one's life. And therefore, this Bisarti Tzedek B'Kahal Rav, I proclaimed your righteousness, Hashem, in large congregations. Hine Svasai Lo Echla, my lips never stopped, ceasing to say over that Hashem, Ata Yodata, never stopped talking about you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you know that, Hashem. You know that with everything that I went through in my life, and you know that with all the twists and the turns and the challenges that you brought my way, you know that what did I do? I didn't sit in misery. On the other hand, I went around to everyone that I had a chance to say over to, and I spoke about your righteousness, I spoke about your greatness, I spoke about the grandeur and the glory of your judgments and the way that you run the world so perfectly, and I spoke about the fact that through the challenges that you put me through in my life, that is what made me great. And therefore, I never stopped my lips from moving, talking about you. Says Rav Hirsch over here, first, I saturated my mind with Hashem's law, with the Torah. And then I sought to bring others also to recognize this law, and that they should give their allegiance to the Torah as well. Meaning that when I myself could recognize that everything that's going on in my life is a product of your tzedek, of your righteousness, And the more that you do to me, the more adversity that I have, the more I am myself, I connect myself to your Torah, the more that I learn. Because without Torah, how's a person going to know what to do? How's the person going to know how to get through the challenges? How will they know what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants of us? So therefore, once that I have that, and I realize that this is like the light that will get me through the darkness in this world, I'm able to understand that my goal is that I would like to go and share that now with anybody that I can. And you know, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that I took it upon myself to spread your Torah. I took it upon myself to spread the understanding of the laws of the Torah and the messages and the hashkafa, the outlook of the Torah. And I did not withhold my lips from ever speaking kindly about you and everything that you do. And that's what he writes over here. What is the Besorah? What is the message over here? It's this song, this Shira Chadasha that we spoke about last week. It's a new song that Dovid HaMelech has a revelation as it comes to reality of. And that revelation is that no matter what it is that a person's going through, as long as you are connected to Hashem, as long as you have Torah in your life, as long as you have the Rabbi Shalem in your life, so then a person is never alone, and they never have to fear, and they never have to worry about anything. And therefore I proclaim not just about you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I proclaim that everything is tzedek, everything is just, and everything is righteous, and that everything is exactly the way that it's supposed to be. And he says that the fruits of Hashem's ways, which I experienced in the past, and by the way in which I received those benefits from you, Hashem, are the ways that He tested me, that He trained me, that He delivered me, and He gladdened me. The tests of life are in order to make me a better person. The challenges of life are to gladden me. How could a person be happy when he's going through a challenging situation? So when a person realizes that's what's going to get me to the top, that's what's going to bring me, is like the person, I think they have a statement in Hebrew, and it basically says that if it's hard, if the pedaling of the bike is difficult, that must mean that you're going uphill. If it's easy, you're going down. So a person wants to get to the top. The only way to be able to do that is if you are working very hard to get there. The challenges that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends our way is the uphill battle to get us higher and higher and higher up. And therefore, I utilize what you've given me, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I see that your fatherly guiding love and justice is always surrounding me. And therefore, I'm going to express my feelings and my emotions and my ava, my love of you, and my gratitude towards you for everything that you have done for me. Before the shir began, I received a phone call from my brother-in-law in Eretz Yisrael, and he told me that one of the families that is sitting Shiva, the Koltai family, who I also know, but not as well as my brother-in-law, he was chavrusas with the father 22 years ago. Maybe, the truth of the matter is, I think it's even more than that. It's more than 22 years ago. It's probably more like 25, 26 years ago when they were first starting off in yeshiva together. And he said that he went to the shiva house to go pay a shiva call for the family who just lost a 13-year-old son. And he sat in the car before he went in, and he was thinking to himself, what could I say? What could I do? I have to go and be mechazak. I have to give them strength. But he said he got into the shiva house and he didn't have to say a word, because the father himself was darshaning, was making drushes about emunah and bitachon the entire time in such a real, honest way, that my brother-in-law said he walked out of there after an hour of being in the shiva house so elevated, so overwhelmed with the koyach, with the power that a yid has inside of him. So he said that the father was sitting there, and he said the house was packed. It was packed, and there was, on Zoom, there was a camera that was people coming the whole time and making shiva calls. And he said that the father was there, and he said over the following words. He said, I want you to know that I am Shalem. I am fine with the decision. I'm complete. Shalem means I'm complete. I'm at peace with the decision that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made. And he said, why shouldn't I be? He said, my son was a tzaddik, and the stories that are coming out about this young boy, his righteousness, his purity, his everything, his learning, his midah, he said, my son was a tzaddik, he was a very special boy. What were the last moments of his life? He was there in Meron at 12:30 in the morning, they davened Mariv. That's what everybody did at 12:30. He said, my son had finished davening Mariv. After Mariv, everybody there, they were makabel, O Malchus Shemaim, they said, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, thousands of people. After that, I don't know, apparently there's videos going around what took place just moments before. Everybody was together singing Ani Ma'amin. They were singing the Ani Ma'amin that we've been singing for generations, waiting for Mashiach to come. And then right after that, my son left the world, he said. He said, can you imagine the level that he was on? He davened Mariv, he accepted the yoke of heaven, he sang Ani Ma'amin, there was singing, there was dancing, they were elevated on the highest madrega you can imagine. That's how my son left the world. He said, I'm shalom with that. I'm complete and I'm at peace with it. Don't think I'm not broken. Don't think it doesn't hurt. Of course I am. He said, but you should know, I accept what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did. Believe shalom with a complete heart, because I know that he knows what he's doing. Dovid HaMelech says over here that if a person goes through challenges in life, a person goes through difficulties in life, and they reach a madrega, they reach a level where they are makabel, they can accept upon themselves what HaKadosh Baruch Hu does, and he knows what he's doing, and it's all for the good, and I have nothing to be angry about, and the like. So then you got to go share that with somebody else. Other people have to see how you withstood the challenges, the nisayon of life, and you have to stand in front of the Rav Kahal, in front of the major congregation, or my brother-in-law said the house was streaming with people. There were so many people that were there. He just came at 1 hour. He says, could you imagine all the other hours of the shiva that were going on, the hundreds, if not thousands of people that came to that house while he was there. And this father and this mother sat there with like royalty, he said. The royalty of servants of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of the children of Hashem who feel the embrace of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All that the father was doing was just expressing his gratefulness for all the time that he did have with his son. He said, COVID, he's a businessman, the father. And they made Aliyah many years ago, but he has to travel back and forth to America constantly. He said, COVID was such a bracha, because for 7 months, he said, I didn't leave my house. For 7 months, I was with my son. I was with him, I saw him, I spent time with him. He said, recently, the last, I think, couple of months, his son started doing something. It was very bizarre. He never did it before. Every day, he said, my son would go home for 15, 20 minutes at lunchtime, and if the food was ready on the table, he would sit down with us and he would eat with us. And if it wasn't ready, then he would just pick up and he would leave and run back to yeshiva. HaKadosh Baruch Hu put into the son, you're not going to be with your parents forever. So for those last 2 or 3 months before everything happened in Meron, he said, I told my wife, make sure you have the food ready, because he's coming home anyway. Let's get to spend the time with him. So for the last 2 or 3 months, every single day, out of the blue, his son just decided he's going to start coming home, and they had lunch together every day, 15, 20 minutes. I treasure those times. My brother-in-law was getting up to leave, and he went to say, Hamakim Yenachem Eschem. And the man, they hadn't seen each other in 22 years. They were chavrusas 25, 26 years ago in yeshiva, but the last time they saw each other was 22 years before. So my brother, he says to my brother, and who are you? So he tells him his name. Because my brother-in-law, Baruch Hashem, changed quite a bit in 22 years. His beard's a lot longer than it was 22 years before. In an instant, he said to him, I think about you every day. So he says, you think about me every day? He says, yeah. Do you know why I think about you every day? I said, I have no idea. He said, because 25 years ago when I came to yeshiva, you taught me how to say Kriya Shema. I think about you every single day. Mika Amcha Yisrael. Who are like the Jewish people? Sitting in a shiva house, mourning the loss of your 13-year-old son. And if you'll hear the stories about this boy, the kid was not a regular 13-year-old kid. He was on a madrega, on a level of godless, of greatness, of purity, of holiness, of sanctity. A neshama that was so big, so excited about mitzvahs, about learning, about midas. Rav Feldman, I believe our Rosh Yeshiva from there happened to be in Eretz Yisrael, and he came in for the shiva, and he told the parents, he says, some people, they try 60, 70, 80 years of their life to become a gadol b'Yisrael, they become a great person in Klal Yisrael. He said, your son accomplished that by the time that he was 13 years old. So here's a parent, he knows what he lost. He knows what he doesn't have anymore. And he sees my brother, shouldn't I think about you every day? Why? Gratitude. Because you taught me how to say Shema. If you wouldn't have taught me to say Shema, that means every day that I say Shema, in the morning and the evening, it's all in your schus because of you. And that's why he was saying he was Shalem. He's complete with that. And that's Dovid HaMelech is saying over here, these ideas. What are the ideas? The ideas are that yes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you run the world, and yes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, sometimes it's challenging and it's difficult, and it could even be painful. All of that is true. Nevertheless, and notwithstanding, it doesn't make me weaker in my connection to you. Adarabba, on the other hand, it strengthens my connection to you. It makes me stronger. I was reminded that in Har Nof, about, I don't know if it's maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago already, there was the Har Nof massacre. You recall there was 4 Yidden that they were in shul, and the Arab came in with his knife, and he killed, I think it was 4. He killed 4 people that morning in that Har Nof shul. One of them was by the name of Moshe Tversky. He was a Rebbe for many years at a yeshiva called Torah Moshe. He was a big person in the world of learning, of tzidkus, of righteousness, of avodas Hashem. He had all these different things that he did because of his tremendous love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He never slept on Shabbos. The entire Shabbos, it says you have to guard the Shabbos. Well, how can you guard the Shabbos if you go to sleep? You need HaKadosh Baruch Hu to take care of you if you're sleeping. So every Shabbos, without fail, his family never saw him go to sleep because he was busy keeping the Shabbos, guarding it, making sure that it was kept in the right way. He would, after the meal was over, he would just sit and he would learn through the night, and then he would go and he would daven early. And then after the daven, he would come back, he would have a meal, and then after the meal, he would learn, and he would be with his family, and he would learn with... That's how he spent every Shabbos of his life. Talking about a great person, he was very makpid, he was very particular, that on Sukkot, he would shake the Dalaminim, the 4 species. He wanted to make sure that he covered all of opinions. And there's a lot of different kinds of esrogim that are out there in the world, a lot of different kinds, and each one has its own, what we call yichus, has its own lineage, whether or not it's the official esrog of the Jewish people or not. So he knew about a certain person who lived in Mea Sharim. He lived in Har Nof, Rabbi Tversky. Now, if you can imagine in your mind the streets of Jerusalem, from Har Nof to Mea Sharim is a nice bus ride. It's a nice taxi ride as well. But on the first day of Yom Tov, early in the morning, it's an even nicer walk. But he would go early in the morning, when everybody else was still sleeping, and he would walk from Har Nof all the way into Mea Sharim, to this one Jew's house, who had every single type of esrog you can imagine, and he would go there and he would shake everyone, and then he would walk back to Har Nof. Nobody even knew, most of the time nobody even knew what he was doing, and he would do that because he was an Oved Hashem. So Chili Birnbaum was one of the boys who was from our community over here. He was a Talmud, he was a student of Rav Moshe Tversky. And when Rav Tversky was nifter, when he died, so of course he went to pay a Shiva Kol. I believe that he went a few times to pay a Shiva Kol because he was so inspired by what took place there. Rav Tversky left behind a Rebbitzin, who's a Tzadikis. And everybody thought they're going to have to walk into the house and be Menachem Avel and say nice things about her husband and try to give her chizuk. He said the Rebbitzin was sitting there and she was darshaning about Emunah and about Bitochen and about her husband and about how Hashem runs the world and we have no complaints. Hashem knows. She was sitting there darshaning to Rosh Yeshivas. She was darshaning about how great HaKadosh Baruch Hu is and how He knows exactly what He's doing. He said everybody walked out. They're like, was that for real? What was going on inside that room? And it was the most real thing in the world because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, He lifts people up in the times of their tragedy. He lifts them up in the times of their challenges and the difficulties they're going through to make them like a kli, a vessel that can receive Emunah in such a way. Dovid HaMelech is saying, I was not broken by my tribulations. I was not beaten down by all of the tragic things I had to go through. Like we said 1,000 times, nobody had a life like Dovid HaMelech. Nobody in the history of Klal Yisroel. And yet he's saying, you know what my greatest desire is, Hashem? I just want to fulfill your will. I'm not angry with you. I'm not upset with you. I'm not going to turn away from you. No, chas v'chalila. I'm going to recognize that you're just doing this to elevate me and bring me closer to you. And as a result, I need to go and proclaim that in the multitudes of people, that everybody should hear how great you are, Hashem. Everybody should hear that Torah is what's going to, the more that you absorb the Torah into your life, the more that you live be'emunah, tzaddik be'emunasa yichya, a righteous man lives with his emunah. It's not that you could just be a righteous person any other way. Tzaddik be'emunasa, with his emunah yichya, he's going to live. That's my whole chiyus. My whole life force, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is recognizing you and you, that you are the one that is doing everything that is here. And therefore, I'm not sad, I rejoice. I'm not downtrodden, I'm glad in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because you've given me a very powerful and strong connection to have with you, and I see your salvation, I recognize your goodness, and I see that all is coming from you. Tzidkascha lechisisi, I did not conceal your righteousness, Hashem. B'seich libi emunascha. Inside of my heart is your emunah. My faith and my dedication to you is deep in my heart. Ushuascha amarti, I spoke about your salvation. Lo kichadati chazdecha v'amitecha l'kahal rav. I did not hide your mercy, nor your truth and your kindness from the great congregations of people that are around me. Says Dovid HaMelech, I declared before them how I experienced your emunah, your faithfulness, which guided me in my inner conflict. This means that he's saying over an amazing idea, and that is that whatever it is that a person is going through, you know why Hashem is sending it? Because He wants you to achieve a much deeper place in your emunah than you had before. Otherwise, He would not send it to you. Whatever it is, a challenge that a person has in their life is only in order to make sure that the emunah is tzaddik be'emunasa yicheh. You'll be a v'chiyas. You'll have a life from your emunah. It won't be something that's just up here. It'll become an emunah, as Dovid says. It was nivla in besari. It became something that was absorbed in my most innermost parts of my life. And that's what Dovid is saying over here. He says that whatever inner conflict I had, whatever it is that I was going through, because of that, I became so steeped in emunah. Now this Dovid HaMelech, we would assume had a lot of emunah before this. But he was saying he understood all of that contributed to his emunah. And shuascha, your salvation. And that is that it's you who brought me the victories from my struggles with my foes from within and from without. You are HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're the one who's in charge. You will give me the ability, you will give me the strength, you will be my foundation and my source of fortitude in this world, that whatever it is that a person is going to end up going through, it's all to make the emunah stronger. I said over in Shul on Shabbos that I forget the name of the father, one of the fathers who Rahman Zan lost 2 children, the Hasidic family, and when the news became a reality on the night of Lag BaOmer, he said he was up the whole night. Who could sleep after such a thing? It was so traumatic. He was up the whole night. And he said he was davening for one thing. He was such an honest person, he said. He said, I was davening to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please HaKadosh Baruch Hu, don't take away my faith in you. The tragedy is so hard to bear. Don't take away my faith in you. He was mispalel to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and this man that lifted himself up, there's stories that are coming out of his shiva house of the emunah and the bitachon that he is saying to every person that comes in there. Everybody comes to be mechazik, to give strength to him, and everybody walks out of there with this whole new look on the hand of Hashem. A whole new look on how HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world. A whole new concept of what it means to be a person who is living be'emunah, living with faith. And that is because when a person will understand, like Dovid is saying over here, and that is, it's that the conflict that you gave me in my life is all because it's going to connect me deeper in the world of emunah. I have nothing to be angry about and nothing to be upset about. I'm not going to feel sorry and bad for myself. Adarabba, on the other hand, I'm going to use it to live in a much deeper, connected way than I ever was with you before. And that's what he's writing over here. I'm skipping around a little bit, but it says over here that in Pasuk 13, Dovid HaMelech writes over here about emes and chesed and noitzer, about preserving, and it says over here the following, that Dovid HaMelech says, there's countless sufferings that have beset me, and I knew they were brought on because of my own errors and my mistakes in life. And as a result of that, says Dovid HaMelech, I utilize that which you have set me to correct myself and to make myself stronger. If a person sees suffering, haba aleim, coming upon them, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu, again, we mentioned this in some of the shiurim about everything. There's not the way that we look at Meron. The parents are not sitting there thinking, what did I do wrong? Why did this happen to me? There's wives that are not thinking, I must have been a bad wife. That's why my husband, who left behind 9 children for me to suffer. It's not what they're thinking. HaKadosh Baruch Hu had some master plan over here. We plucked out these 45 Kedoshim, these very holy neshamas that he took away from Klal Yisroel. That's one thing. But for us, in our own personal lives, when we see struggles coming upon us, we have to begin to think to ourselves, is there anything that I could have done wrong that precipitated such a thing? And the truth be told, we're not Nevi'im, we're not prophets. We cannot know why HaKadosh Baruch Hu does what he does. Nevertheless, we can figure out after the fact what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to do. Meaning, if a person sees difficulties, and they see challenges coming their way, so then they know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is talking to me, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't have Nevi'im, prophets anymore to speak to us. So how does Hashem speak to us? So the Horowitz quotes from the Navi, the only way that Hashem speaks to us is when he brings things upon the world, he brings things upon people. That is the voice of HaKadosh Baruch Hu whispering in our ears, I need you to pay attention and see that you need to straighten yourself out. So whatever it is that a person goes through in life, says Dovid, you have an opportunity to straighten yourself out. You could find one thing in your life, not everything. We're never going to correct everything, at least not at once. But find one area of your life where you're going to be able to connect and become better and stronger in that. I would imagine that in the world right now at large, especially with everything, and everybody is speechless over the events of Meron, and the stories come out more and more every day. And you start hearing, these were not 45 average Joes. These were 45 tzaddikim. Everyone was so unique and so special in their way. They were tzaddikim, they were learning, they were bali amuna, they were way above, the young kids were way above their years of what they accomplished at such a young age. Each one, their friends could not stop talking about them, how kind and how caring and how chesedic, and they were the one that you could turn to, the one you could go to. You can't, the father who was always there. There was one boy, this one young man, I think his name is Yisrael, I forget what his last name is. He left behind a wife and 2 children. He was a young man, 27 years old, I think. He was a big person. He was very, very strong. The last act that he did in his life was he was there. he saw that things are not looking good, and he was so strong, he picked a person up. He lifted him up from the pack and he pushed him over the side of the wall to save his life, and then he got crushed himself. His last act in this world. He could have, if he's that strong, he could have jumped himself. But his last act in this world was to save the life of another person. It's not a regular person. That's not a regular person who just left this world. That's someone, his whole mindset was to think about others and to take care of Klal Yisroel. So as we are still reeling in the aftermath, and it will continue on. It will continue on because as more stories will come and more families will need more help. It's remarkable, if you think about it, how many millions and millions and millions of dollars have been collected from Jews all around the world in the last week and a half. Millions and millions of dollars Klal Yisroel is giving like they've never given before because everybody feels such a connection to all of them. How many organizations have been started, how many psychiatrists and psychologists are being sent to work for free to go to these families right now to help the children and the wives that are left over to deal with the aftermath of not having a husband or a father anymore there. One thing that we all have to work on and strengthen is, of course, our emunah is our faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's the emunah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want blind faith, by the way. That's a misnomer. HaKadosh Baruch Hu never asked us to follow Him blindly. He asked us, as the Rambam writes in the very beginning of Sefer, the Mishnah Torah, he writes that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us later to know Him. We're supposed to know HaKadosh Baruch Hu to the best of our abilities. We learn from Him as we examine our own lives. We learn from Him as we learn the Torah. We see what Chazal say. We see how the Svarim speak about Him, the way that He runs the world. We have to know the Hashem as best as we can so that our emunah is based upon something. Blind faith might be for other religions, not for our religion. Our religion, Torah, is a Torah that is based upon knowledge. It's based upon understanding. It's based upon chachma, bina, udas. The deeper that you understand something, the more you're connected. The deeper you understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the more you are connected to Hashem. But of course, at the end of the day, there's always going to be a point in one's life you simply cannot understand Hashem. And at that point, with all of the foundations of emunah, of faith that you have, then you can make that leap of faith at that point. All of these great families, these giants of these pillars of emunah that we are just watching unfold in front of as my brother-in-law said, that he walked out of that house, he could not believe it. He could not believe that this Pashut Yid, this simple Jew, is sitting in his house and he's talking in the most amazing ways of emunah, how he's describing his emunah is in HaKadosh Baruch Hu and how everything is the way it's supposed to be, and he has no anger with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and yes, he's pained and he's hurt, but he believes so strong in HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he knows what he's doing. So from them, we have to learn to translate it into our own lives and to be mechazik, to strengthen our emunah, our faith in Hashem as well. Whatever that will mean for you. They say that this series of books, I think it's called Living Emunah by Rabbi Dovid Ashir, is apparently, I've spoken to Rebbitzins who are older Rebbitzins who have been through a lot in their life, and they have raised majestic families of Torah and of mitzvahs. And this Rebbitzin told my wife and I, you should know, this book changed my life. You become a person that is literally living with emunah, and you start to see the world in a different way. So whether it is that we're going to go buy that book, whether we're going to go to Shiurim on emunah, we're going to find something else that is mechazik us, strengthened in the world of emunah. But certainly during this time, when it's so confusing and so unknown, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving us a tremendous opportunity to drive home in our innards, as Dovid is saying over here, the teachings and the lessons and the feelings, the raw feelings of what emunah, of what our faith is going to be. So whatever it is that you choose to take upon yourself, where you want to grow, wherever you will see that I understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants a response from me, whatever that mitzvah is, but it could just be that a starting point for all of us is to become stronger in our emunah. There's so many things that are going on in the world, from the coronavirus to Meron. Now there's fighting apparently on the Temple Mount, which was very violent things going on in Yerushalayim. And now there's speaking about possibly, God forbid, war that's going to break out. There's so many things that are going on right now. If you don't have emunah, how are you going to get through? CNN is going to teach you how to look at the world. All the Jewish websites, the news sites, they're going to tell you how you should look at the situation. The only way that we're going to know how to look at this situation, of course, is if we have emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we understand the way that He runs the world to the best of our abilities. Of course, as we have said, nobody can understand Hashem clearly. Nobody. Even Moshe Rabbeinu cannot understand Hashem clearly. Because Baruch Hu said, I can only show you my back. I can't show you my face. I can't show the essence of who I am. But if a person will buckle down and strengthen themselves in the world of Amunah, so then we're able to live through the situations, personal, familial, communal, Klal Yisroel in general, we'll be able to live through them in a different way. So he writes over here, Dovid says in Pasuk 17, skipping around, Yasisu v'yismechu becha, kol mevakshecha. Anyone that is searching for you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, let them rejoice. Remember, Dovid is writing these words at the very end of a Tehillim, which exclaims, I have a hard life. I went through a lot. It's not been easy. But I'm searching for you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I want to be in your world and I want you in my life. Says Dovid, therefore anyone that's mevakshecha, anyone who searches, let them yasisu v'yismechu, let them rejoice and be happy. Yoimru samid yigdal Hashem ayavai chuasecha, let those who love victory say that God is great. Says Rav Hirsch over here, whoever sees the hand of Hashem in the events of history and in the fate of man will rejoice in my deliverance. For in it they will find a confirmation of their hopes and convictions. Meaning, Dovid HaMelech is saying, at the end of the day, he's never abandoned. At the end of the day, Dovid overcomes every trial and tribulation. Every time that they tried to kill him, he bounced back. Every time he got sick, he got healthy. Every time that his son came to chop him down, somehow he avoids the son another time. Every time that the enemies are piling up all against him, he gets out of there. Every time that they said bad things about him and his honor was shamed and he was embarrassed and all of that, he ends up coming back even stronger than he was before. Says Dovid HaMelech, if you are a person who is able to see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that is running the world, then you will recognize in my life as well, all that I've been through, I'm still standing. I'm still here. I'm still the king, Melech Yisrael, of all of Klal Yisrael. I'm still keeping the army going. I'm still the man who is singing the praises of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. After all, you would think Dovid HaMelech would not have many songs to sing after such an arduous life. And yet he has 150. And they're written with Ruach HaKodesh. And the songs that bespeak Amunah and Bitachen and Hashem, I love you and I care about you. How much I love your Torah, how much I love sitting in your house of Hashem all the days of my life. That's everyone, one after the other. That's all that he talks about. How did he get there? Because Dovid HaMelech was a Balamuni, was someone who believed in Hashem. He didn't look at the situation as being daunting. He looked at it as being an opportunity for growth. He didn't look at what he was going through as being suffering. He looked at it as being a chance for him to become someone better. And therefore, with his amunah, he was able to weather all the storms, to ride all of the waves. He was able to lift himself up in any situation and become deeper in his connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is something that is reserved for those sensitive of spirit who understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world and that everything he does, like Rabbi Akiva taught us, everything that he does is ultimately for the good. We don't understand. Maybe we don't understand right now. Nevertheless, we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't do bad. Everything that he does is good. And therefore, whether we understand it, whether we can swallow that pill, whether we can accept it in our lifetimes or not, that's all going to be up to us. How will you accept it? Only if a person is building and working on their emunah. Dovid HaMelech is telling us, Work on amunah secha, work on your amunah. Find the deep levels, the well springs of faith that are inside of you. If you do that, says Dovid HaMelech, you'll sing the praises, you'll dance the victory dance for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You've lost. You have tragedies. There's hardships. But we'll learn from the Gedolei Yisrael, the great Yidden of our generation who are going through the most horrific of experiences. And yet the story, one Shiva house after the other, one after the other, is all about the tremendous madregas of Amunah that these people are on. And everybody walks out inspired. From the most religious Jew in the world to the most chiloni, to the most secular Jew in the world. They are walking out totally inspired by the lives and the nobility of Amunah that they are seeing. Says Dovid in the final words of it, as for me, says Dovid HaMelech, I am just poor and defenseless. Hashem, yechashiv li, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, think about me. As Rasi umafalti ata, you are my help and my salvation. Elokai al ta'acher, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, do not delay at all in what you do. I know, what am I compared to you, Hashem? I'm a nothing. I'm a speck of dust in this world. Although that he's Dovid HaMelech and he's well known in the world, it means nothing compared to you, Hashem. I put my faith and my emunah and my bitachon, I place it completely in you, Hashem, that you are the one that will help me, you are the one that will deliver me, and you are the one that I'm asking, don't delay, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I want you up now. And when you are such a person of emunah, when you're such a person of deep, deep belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you have the right, like I saw by Rav Gamliel Rabinovich writes, you have the right to ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu for salvation. If you don't believe in Hashem, so what are you asking for? If your emunah is waving sort of make a deal with Hashem, if you'll do this, then I'll really believe in you. Don't make deals with Hashem. I'm going to ask for a deal. Because God says, I'll give you emunah. I'll give you opportunities to believe in me. Strengthen your emunah, and then daven to me like you mean it. Don't make deals. That's what we run into these things where we say, well, if you'll do this, then I'll really do that. If you do. Hashem says, I've given it all to you. I gave you the Megillus Sefer. I've given you the book, the scroll, the Torah. It's all there. I'm teaching you how to look at your life to understand how things are working. If you in fact will do that, then Be'ez Hashem, we will be zeichet to strengthen the well springs of Amunah that are in us. We'll live not in a life of regret or a life of frustration or anger or the like. Rather, we'll live a life where we are Be'emunasa Yichi, we're living, we're getting a chiyus from our Amunah, and we can sing the praise of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We can share that with other people, mechazik them, strengthen them in their Amunah as well. And in that way, like Dovid HaMelech says, that Hashem, for your deliverance, for your salvation I wait, we all wait for the salvation of Hashem, b'mheira v'yameinu.